Moi everyone and welcome to Finnish Plate. Every Finn loves Karelian pies, but they are a little cumbersome to make because you have to make all those little folds by hand. I saw this recipe online where you make one single tray of Karelian pie, so this way you can enjoy the taste of Karelian pie, but you don't need to spend all your time making the little pies by hand. Of course, you have to serve it with some freshly made egg butter. So join me and I'll show you how to make this pan version of Karelian pie. So first, let's make a simple rice porridge. In my pot over here, I'm gonna add a cup of short grain rice. I'm gonna add 3 cups and 3/4 of whole milk. Turn the heat on. So we're gonna bring this to a simmer, and then we're gonna simmer it for about 20-30 minutes until it's just almost done. So one important thing is just to make sure it does not boil over, so you cannot leave this on the stove. You have to keep watching it and also keep stirring it every once in a while so it doesn't burn. While my rice pudding is heating up, I'm gonna make the dough. I have 1.5 cups of rye flour, 1/2 cup of all-purpose flour. I'll add 1 teaspoon and 1/4 of salt, and I'll just mix this all to get it combined. I also have here 1 cup of water and 5 teaspoons of neutral cooking oil. Everything goes in there. And now we're just going to mix this all up to create a dough. This is not a sourdough. There's no leavening in here at all. So all we need to do is just mix it and let it hydrate, and then it's ready. So pretty much by the time the rice is going to be ready, the dough is going to be ready. And I'm just going to knead this a little bit with my hands. Again, because it's mostly rye, there's not a ton of gluten in here. So a lot of kneading is not necessary. The only thing you're really doing is just bringing the dough together and hydrating it. We do have a little bit of wheat all-purpose flour in here, so there's a little bit of gluten. This is not a gluten-free dish. And indeed, some people would definitely argue that a real Karelian pie does not have any wheat in it at all. But I would argue that pretty much all the products you're going to find in Finland, modern Finland, will have wheat in them. So now our dough is ready. I'm just going to cover this and let it sit until our rice is ready. Okay, so about 20 minutes later, the rice filling is done. It's still gonna thicken up a little bit when it cools and also in the oven. I'm just gonna add 1 teaspoon of salt. Mix the salt in. While my filling is cooling down, I'm gonna take my dough and I'm gonna sprinkle a lot of rye flour on my parchment paper here. Let's take the dough out. Roll it in the rye flour. And I'm gonna reserve about 1/3 of the dough. Now the rest of the dough I'm just gonna roll out into a sheet. The rye flour will help prevent it from sticking. Just remember the dough is very tender, so you can't really lift it up too much, unlike a regular pizza dough, for example, because it will break because there's no gluten in it. It's a little bit smaller than the pan, but it's all right. will manage. I'm just going to add some rye flour to my pan as well. And I'm going to transfer the dough into my pan over here. So we're actually baking it without the parchment. There we go. Now we'll spread our filling on the dough, leaving about an inch on each edge so we can turn the edges up. Actually, on this side looks like there's a little bit more than an inch, so let's see if I can move the dough a little bit further. There we go. If it breaks, you could just basically patch it up like that. That's all right. There we go. So we will spread our filling. So what you're trying to do is make the filling pretty much as even as possible. So now that all the filling is in, we're just gonna lift the edges up on top of our filling. Like this. And we're gonna create those very characteristic folds that the regular Karelian pie has. That the traditional Karelian pie has. And now we'll take the rest of our dough. We're going to roll this out. Use plenty of rye flour to prevent it from sticking. And now I'm going to take my pizza cutter and cut strips off the dough. And we're going to lay these strips across our dough over here, or our pan rather, to add that little extra rye crustiness. Now I'll just gently press these strips on top of the filling. This is now going to go in the oven 550 degrees for about 12 minutes. And straight out of the oven, we'll brush this liberally with some melted butter. Make sure to get butter everywhere. And now we're going to let this cool down a little bit before we're going to serve it. Now the pie has pretty much cooled down, so it's ready to eat. Of course, some people prefer the crust, some people prefer the filling, so here you have a little bit of choice of what piece you're going to get. Either way, what you do is you just cut this up in squares, and I have here some freshly made egg butter to serve it with. I know that this recipe will trigger those who search for that ultimate authenticity, because this is by no means an authentic recipe, but the taste and the texture is exactly the same as having a Karelian pie, and it's a lot less work. So go ahead, if you're intimidated by Karelian pies making them, make this version instead, and you too will absolutely love this. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time on Finish Your Plate.